I was in Berlin for an art residency when my parents sold my studio to fund my brother's startup. When I returned, scaffolding wrapped the building like a cage, and my walls were already being torn apart. "You can paint anywhere," my mother said. I smiled. "What's funny?" they snapped. I answered quietly, "The studio you sold was actually," and that's when they began yelling. My name is Addison. I'm 31, and for most of my adult life, my address was a third-floor loft in an old factory block that once smelled like rust and damp concrete. Then the city discovered its charm. The alleyways were filled with string lights, warehouses turned into galleries, and the rent became aggressive. My loft wasn't a luxury. It was both a wound and a refuge. It belonged to my grandfather before it came to me. My grandfather, the painter. The man who raised me after my grandmother passed, while my parents became distant, busy figures. He taught me how to stretch canvas tightly enough that it would hum when tapped. He showed me that silence can be powerful if used carefully. He taught me to face a blank wall until it no longer felt threatening. When he died, he left me the loft, not because it was valuable, though it later became so, but because it was mine in a family where mine usually meant temporary. In my family, my brother Samuel is the future. He has been on the verge since college, always one investor away, one pitch away, one breakthrough away. My parents speak about him like he's a sunrise they personally arranged. I'm the opposite, the talented but unstable daughter, the one whose success is seen as a curious coincidence. My exhibitions are nice. My commissions are interesting. My work is treated as a phase that lasted just long enough to make them uneasy. The arrangement was simple. I earned, I contributed, and I didn't ask for much. I was useful. I was tolerated. Berlin broke that pattern. For 3 months, I was anonymous. No one expected practicality. No one called asking for help. I painted until my wrists ached and my chest felt open. I began a series I had avoided for years. Work about inheritance, about being valued only when convenient, about spaces that remember. I came home with charcoal under my nails and a hopeful plan to finish the series in my loft in the same light my grandfather used to follow across those windows. But when the taxi turned onto my street, my mind refused to accept what I saw. Scaffolding, metal poles, netting wrapped around the building as if it were being prepared for transport. Workers in hard hats moved with authority. A dumpster sat outside, filled with broken drywall and splintered wood stacked like remains. I stepped out before the car fully stopped. The front door was held open with a bucket. Inside, the hallway looked stripped. Mailboxes removed, posters gone, paint scraped down to pale patches. The air tasted like dust. "Can I help you?" a man called out. He held a tablet and carried the calm confidence of someone with approval. "I'm Addison," I said, steadying my voice. "Unit 3C, that's my studio." He tapped his screen. 3C, he repeated. "Full renovation. Your belongings were moved to storage. New owners began demolition yesterday." New owners, the words landed hard. "I didn't sell," I said. He gave a polite final look. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I just follow the schedule." My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Don't dramatize. We made a reasonable business decision. Samuel needed capital, proof of assets for a closing round. You can paint anywhere." I read it twice. My throat tightened, dry and heavy. I called, still hoping there had been some misunderstanding. My father answered. "Addison," he said as if I were simply late. "You're back." "Did you sell my studio?" I asked. There was a pause, not surprise or guilt, just mild irritation, like I'd asked him to explain paperwork. "It was an investment," he said, "for the family." "For Samuel," I replied. "Don't do that," he warned. My mother cut in, her tone smooth and sharp. "You're overreacting." "I'm standing outside my building," I said. "They're tearing it apart." "And you'll be fine," she replied, calm and certain. "You always are. You can paint anywhere." In the background, I heard Samuel laughing at something. That sound shifted something in me. "Put 'em on," I said. He took the phone as if it were a favor. "Addison," he began, already sounding weary, "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Like what?" I asked, with my walls sitting in a dumpster. "I needed liquidity," he said, sounding like he'd memorized a pitch deck. "Timing mattered. It's not personal." "It's not just a space. It's my grandfather," I replied. "It's a room," he corrected, sharper now. "And you don't even use it efficiently. I'm building something scalable. Investors don't wait for emotions." I waited for my mother to step in, to call out the cruelty. She didn't. Silence can also be an answer. I ended the call. That night, I didn't cry. I couldn't. Anger kept me steady, like a backbone I hadn't realized I had. I called Maya. She wasn't a casual friend. She was a lawyer I met through a collector who appreciated both art and litigation. Maya worked with facts. She didn't react to tears, but she didn't encourage them either. "Send me everything," she said. Messages, emails, anything showing how they handled the sale. And don't speak to them without me. The next morning, in her office, she reviewed my documents with a level of attention my parents never gave me. "There's an issue with how this was sold," she said. "What kind of issue?" I asked, my stomach already tightening. "Not a use covenant," she clarified. "It's split ownership. Your grandfather arranged it years ago." "Split? How?" "The building shell and the unit interior are legally separate," Maya explained, tapping the page. "A developer can purchase the structure, the HOA can manage common areas, but the interior build-out, the studio, the airspace rights connected to Unit 3C, those belong to you independently. They weren't authorized to transfer that." I stared at her. "So they couldn't sell it?" "They could sell what they believed was the studio, the shell interest, the listing on paper," she said, "but not the part that actually holds value. Not without your consent." Maya pulled out the recorded sale documents. My signature was there, not mine, but close enough to pass through people who process paperwork quickly. Worse was the attached letter. Formal, calculated, damaging. It described me as an eccentric artist with a history of instability, unable to manage assets responsibly, requiring family oversight. I sat there, reading a version of myself reduced to a liability. Not a daughter, a problem with a solution. "They didn't just take it," I said, my voice distant. "They tried to remove me entirely." "They tried to make you replaceable," Maya replied. "That shows intent." Then she did something my family never had. She treated what happened as important. We filed an emergency motion, a stop work order, fraud claims, and notified the developer that the interior rights were never transferred. We made it clear that continuing demolition risked liability for destroying property not owned by the buyer. By afternoon, my mother had called 12 times. I didn't answer. The old version of me would have responded to keep things calm. This version watched the phone like it was something dangerous. 2 days later, they arrived at my temporary rental as if they were there to correct an employee. My mother walked in without asking. My father followed, looking worn. Samuel stood holding his phone like he wanted proof that I was overreacting. "You look awful," my mother said. "Thanks," I replied. Sarcasm was the only thing keeping my hands steady. "We need to talk like adults," she said. "You forged my signature," I answered. My father flinched. Samuel looked away briefly, quick but enough. "We did what was necessary," she said. "For Samuel?" I asked. "For the family," she corrected, as if that justified it. Samuel stepped forward, impatience clear. "The injunction is creating problems," he said. "It's affecting my runway. I have a closing round. I need assets documented. I need stability." "My walls are in a dumpster," I said. "But yes, your runway." He frowned. "Stop making this emotional. We'll get you another studio, a better one." "A replacement," I said, "like you can replace history." My mother's expression hardened. "You're too sentimental. That's your weakness." There it was again, the way they labeled anything in me that didn't serve them. "You can paint anywhere," she said slowly. I looked at her and understood clearly. They weren't confused. They weren't apologetic. They were frustrated that I wasn't complying. Maya told me to meet them at the site, not for closure, but for positioning, for witnesses, for the moment that would shift the narrative. The sky was gray when we met beneath the scaffolding. The netting moved in the wind like a thin curtain trying to cover something exposed. My mother looked at the building with irritation. "Look," she said, "it's progress. You should appreciate it." Samuel's eyes were red, not from regret, but pressure. "Just stop this," he said. "We can fix it. Please, Addison." From him, it sounded less like a request and more like a demand softened at the edges. My mother turned to me. "Stop enjoying this." I almost laughed. She repeated her usual line. "You can paint anywhere," Samuel reacted. "What's funny? This time, the question felt genuine. They could sense the shift, and it unsettled them. I said quietly, "The studio you sold was actually..." And then I paused. Silence creates pressure. I let it build. My mother's eyes widened. "Finish it," she said sharply. Maya stepped forward, holding a folder, and presented a single page. "Clear and precise," she said. "Your parents didn't sell what they believed they sold," Maya explained. "This transaction does not include the interior rights of Unit 3C. It does not include the studio build-out. It does not include the airspace rights associated with the unit. Those belong solely to Addison." For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then Samuel's expression changed. "Interior rights?" my mother said, forcing a laugh. "That's not valid." "It is," Maya replied. "And if demolition continues on property you don't own, we will add claims for destruction and unlawful conversion." My father's voice was quiet. "Addison, we didn't know." "You didn't read," I said. "You didn't care enough to read." I finished calmly with finality. "It never belonged to you to sell." And that was when they started shouting. My mother first, her voice raw. She raised her voice, sharp and forceful, as if volume alone could override the law. "You did this to punish us," she shouted. "You've always been jealous. Always." Samuel ran a hand through his hair, his voice breaking into panic. "Fix it," he said. "Addison, fix it. Call them. Tell them it's fine. Tell them what I need, that you support this, that you accept it." He stepped closer, unsettled. "You owe me. You always help." My mother pointed at me. "You're selfish," she said. "You're ruining your brother." I looked at her and heard my grandfather's voice in my mind, calm and steady. Silence can be a tool, so I used it. I let their words settle in the dust. I let the workers hear. I let the site manager observe. I let the developer's representative, who had arrived mid-argument, watch everything unfold without interruption. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Any further contact goes through my office," she said. "If you approach Addison again, we will add harassment. The forged signature is a criminal matter. The sale is invalid. Work on the interior is now halted." Halted. The word landed with weight. Before the court date, I visited the storage unit the foreman had mentioned. It was on the edge of the city, a maze of metal doors and fluorescent lighting, the kind of place where people store the remains of difficult transitions in labeled boxes. The clerk handed me a key without looking up. "Unit 48B, sign here." Inside, my life was stacked in rows, canvases wrapped in plastic, crates marked in black ink. My grandfather's old wooden stool sat between a stranger's dresser and a box of unused holiday lights. The stool had a dent in the seat from when I was 12 and dropped a palette knife. A small mistake, a permanent mark. I placed my hand on the wood, and finally I felt it. Not a dramatic kind of grief. Something smaller, sharper. The kind that tightens your jaw and stings your eyes because reacting feels like giving in. My mother called while I stood there. I answered, not out of obligation, but to understand her tone now that consequences had become real. She didn't greet me. "Maya is threatening your father," she said. "She's outlining your decisions," I replied. "This is unreasonable," my mother said quietly. "We were trying to support your brother." "By taking from me?" I asked. There was a pause, then her voice softened. "You're going too far." I looked at the stool, at the paint marks embedded in the grain like fingerprints. "Going too far was forging my name," I said. My father came on the line, his voice low. "Addison, we're your parents." "No," I said. "You're people who had access." Samuel took the phone, urgent. "I can't lose everything," he said. "This deal collapses without collateral. This is my future. Just sign something. Tell them you approve. We'll make it up to you." "Make it up?" I repeated. "With what?" He hesitated. For the first time, there was fear without confidence behind it. "Addison, please?" The earlier version of me would have softened. I would have stepped in to fix it. I didn't. Not after seeing my signature used as something it wasn't. "I'm ending this call," I said. "If you contact me again, it goes through Maya." At the hearing, my parents sat behind their attorney, composed and formal. My mother held her posture, as if she were being challenged unfairly. My father looked noticeably older. Samuel couldn't stay still, his knee moving constantly. Maya stayed direct. She presented facts clearly: the split ownership, the forged signature, the damaging letter, and the timeline showing the sale aligned with Samuel's financial deadline. The judge remained neutral, but his questions became more precise as the hearing continued. When he approved the stop work order, Samuel's posture dropped, as if something holding him upright had been removed. Outside the courthouse, my mother made one final attempt. She stepped in front of me, her voice lowered. "You're doing this because you resent us," she said. I looked at her carefully, as if seeing her without assumptions. "No," I replied. "I'm doing this because I value myself more than your approval." She reacted sharply. Then her expression hardened into something familiar. "You've always been dramatic," she said, turning away as if disengaging from a stranger. Maybe I had been. And maybe that was the first honest response I'd had in that family. A few weeks later, the sale was partially reversed. The developer moved forward with the structural project, but the interior rights remained with me, where they had always been. The forgery investigation continued independently. Samuel's investors stopped responding. My parents, for the first time, had to face consequences directly. The city, through a program my grandfather had quietly been involved in, offered me stewardship of the space I had worked in, not ownership in the usual sense, but authority and responsibility, a key that didn't depend on permission. The first time I returned to the loft, it didn't feel like home. The walls were marked. The floor was bare. But the light still entered the same way, steady and unchanged, settling where my easel once stood. I stood in the center of the space and waited to feel overwhelmed. Instead, I felt something more stable. They hadn't taken my life. They had removed an illusion, the idea that I had to keep earning my place in my own family. I took a piece of charcoal from my bag. My hand was steady. On a clean section of drywall, I drew the first line, clear, deliberate, and without hesitation. They tried to convert this place into an asset. I turned it back into meaning. And if there's a conclusion, it's this. The moment a family begins to treat you as a resource, the relationship shifts the moment you stop serving that role. That realization is difficult, but it's also where independence begins.